Let me preface by saying this is not the books that came out in 2025, just the books that I read during the year that I loved. We have to start with Song of Achilles because this book is magical and it's TikTok famous. It's just very popular in every sense for a reason. This book is beautiful. I really fell in love with the story. It's honestly probably the first book that I really cried at, which I remember in high school thinking, like, I just can't imagine crying over words on a page. Like, I only ever cried maybe during a movie, but never during a book. And this book was the first one. It is a modern retelling of the story of Achilles and Patroclus. It starts when they're pretty young. Patroclus gets exiled from his homeland and he ends up finding Achilles. If you know anything about the Greek myth, then like you know the story, but it's a very, very intimate and accessible retelling that I think resonates with a lot of people in this generation and in this time, because I mean, if you go back and read Greek mythology, it's so wordy and it can be really confusing and hard to grasp, let alone relate to, but this book is so accessible, and that's one of the reasons why I loved it, which is also why I bedazzled it. It actually looks quite beautiful in this lighting. The second book kind of came as a surprise to me. I didn't think I would love it as much as I did. It's The Wedding People. Trigger warning, this book does have talk of unaliving oneself. This book is about a woman named Phoebe who goes to this hotel. She's getting over a divorce. She's just severely depressed and she plans to unalive herself on this night, and she's kind of like splurging on this one hotel to have one good last night. It's very morbid, it's very sad, but while she's there, she realizes that the hotel accidentally booked her at the same time that a wedding is happening, and so the hotel is completely booked by the wedding party, and she's essentially the only person in this entire building who's not a part of the wedding. And when she shows up, she's wearing a silk dress, and so everyone just thinks that she's part of the wedding party. She ends up kicking off a really surprising friendship with the bride and ends up kind of spending the weekend with this bridal party. Her plans are kind of put to a halt and she just has to keep living. And it's a very, very sad book. The way that she talks about her failed marriage and everything that's just kind of gone wrong in her life is hard to read. She talks about the beginning of their relationship and all of the good memories, and then we jump right back into where she is now, which is divorced, alone. It's very sad, but it feels like a very vulnerable depiction of this place, this mental place. I thought going into this book it was gonna be kind of like an Emily Henry vibe, like just some sort of contemporary romance, contemporary fiction, but it ended up being a very profound self-discovery novel, and I admire the depth and the vulnerability that the author put into this book. I think it doesn't glaze over anything. We just get straight to the point. Like, I'm feeling what the character is feeling and I'm rooting for her, and it's just I really loved this book a lot. My next favorite is Writers and Lovers. This one's been around for a bit and I've seen it circulating everywhere. It is about a 31-year-old woman named Casey Peabody who is dealing with her mother's recent death and is kind of living in this in-between of jobs, of relationships, of everything. She might be 31, but I feel like it's very relatable for anyone in their 20s or 30s or post-grad or anything really where you feel like you don't know what you're doing with your life and who you're going to end up with, or if you're going to end up with anyone. Like, it's just very much a figuring it out book. One of my favorite quotes is, "It's a particular kind of pleasure of intimacy, loving a book with someone." My next favorite is Atmosphere by Taylor Jenkins Reid. When I first got into reading, like really got into reading in high school, I've always loved reading, but the obsession I think really started in high school. It was because I read The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which was like the most popular book at the time for many years. Ever since that book, I've just been a huge fan of hers, and so I read every book that she comes out with, but this one really, really, really hit. It was a year of crying at books, apparently, because once I read Song of Achilles, I found a lot of books that made me cry, and this was one of them. I have to interject and say that when I was reading this book, I kept thinking like, there's just no way I'm gonna cry. Like, this is a good story and it's sad, but I'm not gonna cry. And so many of my friends were like, girl, you're gonna sob, because I did. And I was like, I just don't think it's possible. And then I sat on this floor reading the book and I couldn't see the words because my tears were filling my eyes. So if that doesn't sell you, I don't know what will. It is about a woman named Joan. Takes place in the 80s. She works for NASA. It's a tough time for females in this era because it's a very male-dominated space and also a male-dominated world. I love the way that the end unfurled. You know, I'm just probably preaching to the choir, but it's amazing. My last favorite is All This Could Be Different by Sarah Thankum Matthews. I randomly found at my hometown bookstore. It was on sale for $5 for some reason, which is interesting because it's such a good book. I don't know why you would ever put it on sale, but this book is kind of similar to the Writers and Lovers vibe. It's about a post-grad named Sneha. I'm pretty sure that's how you say her name. I could be wrong, and I'm so sorry if I am. She's living in Milwaukee. She's got a full-time job. She's got a paid-for apartment. She's kind of living the life. And then things start to go wrong, and her family lives in a whole different country. There's post-grad life. There's found family. Being multicultural, not being a US citizen, you know, figuring out her relationships with women and finding who her friends are. And it's simple, and yet it's so profound. So corny of me to say that, but it's true. So there's a part in this book where she goes home and her dad is like walking her around this field that she used to walk around in as a kid. And he says, look, remember when you used to drop all these seeds everywhere as a child? Well, they grew into trees and now this tree is here. And she says, she's like looking at it and she's like, how interesting that this tree exists because I was once here, because I once existed here. It's, you know, I think that sentence could kind of go unnoticed, but I thought it was beautiful. I think it's so easy to feel like after post-grad, like the world is so big and no one wants you anywhere because it's so hard to get a job. You know, if you're not living with your family, you feel quite lonely, and especially in the dating world, like nobody knows what they're doing. Like you don't have a lot of comfortability or reassurance that you exist and that you're worthy. And I think that simple sentence, like, I am here, I do exist, and like things happen because of me, like I am worthy. That's kind of what I took away from that passage, but that's kind of the feeling that the book gives. It's like, it's very simple and yet it's so meaningful and relatable and funny. As soon as I finished this book, I DM'd the author because I was like, I just have to tell her how much I love the book, and she responded, and she's so kind.